Well. Welcome back to Krown's Crypto Cave. Waking up for a nice and early, wow, it's only 9 right now, a.m. session in good old Tallinn, Estonia. Nice and bright and sunny outside, although I fucking hate that weather, so give me that goddamn rain. Anyways, no, just kidding. But I do hate sweating, so fair enough. We got plenty to talk about with Bitcoin, as Bitcoin's just kind of shuffling its way along. In fact, the alt's kind of taking the spotlight right now. So as always, want to be wishing you well on this beautiful Thirsty Thursday, or whatever Thursday that you define it as. And without further ado, let's get into the live scene right here, right now, as I make sure that I'm recording and my mic is working. Okay, beautiful teleportation initiated, and there it is, Bitcoin in all of its glory. And I want to spend some time on the daily right here. Now, this is something that my mentor would do a lot. You'll probably notice that I don't do this on Bitcoin all that often, but I'm going to put on a 9 exponential right over here in place of the 21. So it's going to be represented by the yellow moving average. And you can see that Bitcoin did come back down and test it yesterday. And you do see that the yellow the yellow 9 exponential in this case, it has been walking up price action, especially ever since that we got to the golden cross right over here, the green 55 and I suppose the green 50 and the purple 200 right over here. So this is what you typically see on the daily in very strong markets. And so with yesterday's test down to that 8400-ish level, I do consider that a test of the 9 exponential. Typically I use the red 10 simple, but I've noticed that it works a little bit better in Bitcoin land. But as you do see, the 9 exponential does get some play as well, and this is something again that my mentor used a lot, only on the daily and the weekly. And if we actually look on the weekly as well, you'll probably notice that we're actually well above it, but Bitcoin has been being walked up above it, a lot of the way through. Anyways, okay, let me just get rid of that. Sorry, alerts going in off of my face. And okay, mic's actually working. Okay, good. Okay, very happy about that. All right, so anyways, I want to go back to the daily. Just wanted to show that very quick. Yes, it does have its use, and more importantly, we do have a nice wick on that area. So it is being bought up, it is being defended, and we do have continuation on top of that, about 20 bucks higher on this current daily dildo high. So with that said, I'm going to put back on the yellow 21 exponential moving average, and you can see that yes, we are just being walked up. You do see that all moving averages are essentially swishing up into a bullish posturing. We've had that for a while. Just the last one that I'm looking at is this purple 200 exponential moving average and the blue 377 exponential moving average. It is just a matter of time, really, as far as I'm concerned. As long as Bitcoin doesn't dump below about 6,000, we will see those cross. And from a longer term perspective, just setting in that longer term trend. So I always like to start off with the higher time frames, because while lower time frames can switch around multiple times per day, and it can look like you're flip flopping, it's a higher time frame that set the overall trend. So the trend is your friend until the end of the trend, of course. And as you can see, for the past 4 months, Bitcoin's been straight up. So looking at that, I do want to have full transparency talking about my streamer account right over here. I have taken, I woke up and I bought immediately some, and I bought some of my June cover up back, and of course I'll just be, just fucking around with this one, I suppose, for a little bit of time. I didn't get in the rest of my order. I'm still bidding a little bit lower, but overall, pretty happy with that. And I do want to uncover myself long once again, and I'm happy to stay long. I'm happy to remain long as long as we are, no pun intended, closing like 4-hour dildos above this 8650-ish pivot. So with that said, let's look at our oscillators here. We do see daily Stokes still headed up and very erect. They are getting into an area where they don't like to stay in for too long, to be fair. Looking at past prior history, the last time that we saw them get around this high was calling some pretty nasty tops in September 2018, and a few times along the way in the more recent times, but you can see that those were just reaccumulation periods where Bitcoin got bought back up on again. So looking at the historical volatility percentile on the daily as well, we are still kind of working our way up. So I do think that this does offer up the potential for a move higher here. And again, when we start to look at the altcoins, I think it starts to come a little bit more full circle. Not only that, but looking at daily RSI, this is constructive. We have caught wind of the exponential on the RSI, so I do think that we rally off this area. Yes, at some point in time, it's extremely likely that we do put in some nasty bearish divergence, but for now, still building, I would say. And would imply higher highs along the way as well. So with that said, daily, again, just very little's changed there. Overall, looking fine to me. Again, as long as we are remaining above 8650-ish area on higher time frames, that's completely fine. Going into our lower time frames, though, let's go do the crack trader time frames. So we spoke about this yesterday during the live stream, and I didn't really have a strong opinion on what Bitcoin was going to do in like the extremely low time frames. I said about 7,800 to the upside. We got about to 87.77. So, a few bucks off, and then came down and retested the 85.50ish region right over here perfectly. And this is why I don't like having strong opinions in those. Yes, it ended up being right, but I don't want to imply that it's always going to work out like that. It's not perfect. The lower time frames are a lot more erratic. But right now, I do think that we kind of fill up the top side of this range once again. You can see a very obvious resistance coming in right around where all these wicks are, around about 8780-ish area, 8800. I'm just kind of colloquially referring to it as 8800, easier to say. But overall, the range that is between about 8600 low, 8625 if you want to be super exact, and an 8850 to the upside. If we do break above 8850 on I'd say a 4 hour is probably most appropriate, but you could perhaps make the decision on a 2 hour. In fact, a 2 hour could work above 88.50. I do believe that we'll see that next leg of continuation up into the about 91.50, 9200-ish region, wherever this next horizontal comes in around, which is. Well, that's 9,400. I think that it would be a little bit lower than that. Let's actually put it in, be right around. Hey, get on over there, right around here. It looks like, yeah, that's about 9150 to about 9150. We'll call it 9,200. So I do think that relatively soon, if we did see that break, we would see 9,200, on that next move. But of course, until we actually see a breakage of this formation, there's really nothing new to be talking about. Just more consolidation. We did just kind of test the support of it, and that looks fine to me. So after we test some supports, usually go test some resistances. We do see lower time frame and medium time frame also to switch around to a bullish posture once again. So we are seeing the stars kind of aligned. This is your 4 hour Stokes pointed back up and quite erect, defending against the bearish control zone, which I also like as well. Looking at 4 hour RSI looks completely fine to me. Looks very constructive, trying to work its way up. And I do think that this one does imply that we're going to, at the very least, test the top side of the range. Looking at 4 hour historical volatility percentile, this one looks to me like it wants to tick up as well. Overall, just kind of telling us that we're still consolidating. And I'd still stick with what I was saying yesterday, that I do think that we see a breakage of this formation probably by end of tonight. Looking at the volume signature right here and kind of putting a trend line on it, you do see that we start to get pretty mature in it around midnight tonight, and in early tomorrow, I'd say, as from UTC perspective. So that's going to incite that we do break this relatively soon. Not only that, but if you go back on over to the hourly, we will see that hourly historical volatility percentile very, 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 very low. Technically, yes, I want to see it kind of hit a zero before it's like in your face screaming we're about to break. but it's in that range where it can happen at any given moment in time. A nice consolidation right over here. What would you call this? Technically you'd call it a bull flag. I don't really care what you name these formations. All I care about is how you react upon support and resistance. What I could say right here is that this is a bullish posturing. This is a bullish consolidation. As long as we hold about 86.20. If 86.20 does give way, then I do think that we'd have another test back down to 8,400 and probably even come all the way down to fill the gap at about 8,200 on CMEs, which still has been left untouched. But the more and more that I look at this, man, CMEs look good, and they've looked good the whole way through. I would actually be a little bit surprised if we came back down and filled the gap first before getting another try higher. I'd actually be quite surprised if that would happen. But of course, I don't trade my opinion. I trade technical analysis. So what would tell me that that's likely to happen? If we broke below about 8,500 on CMEs. On spot, it's going to be about maybe like 50 bucks lower than that, as they are trading at a little bit of a premium right now. But looking at CMEs for a second here, we do see that overall, again, looking strong, looking fine. We do see daily Stokes still up. Again, they're going to get stuck up there for a while, and that is a good that is a good thing during strong trending moves. We do see daily RSI building as well. Again, going to set in likely some bearish divergence. Do see the golden cross above all major movement averages. Hard to be bearish on anything that looks like that, to be 100% clear. But at the same point in time, I do think that the next leg of this rally probably does sit in our quote unquote high, so to speak. So I'm, while I am kind of bullish here, and I think it's, of course, the trend is your friend until the end. The trend's been fucking bullish for the last 3 months. There's no real reason. Whoa, hey, Elsa's sneezing up a fucking, what was it? I wonder if you guys could hear that. Anyways, what was I basically, what was I getting on before I was so rudely interrupted by this fucking sneezing problem? Anyways, overall, I think we're starting to see things align once again, and more importantly, when it comes down to it, I really wanted to ensure that over the last few days, while there was some, while there was some ranginess expected, some bullishness, some bearishness within this range between about 85 and 88, overall, still, I would be leaning towards the upside. Not only that, but going over here to the weekly and talking about this, which we also spoke about yesterday, the top 1,200 bands, which we've been trending above for pretty much this whole rally, extremely powerful ever since the breakout out of 4,100 over here. I do think that Bitcoin just came back down and tested the top side of this, and that, likely incites some continuation. I wouldn't be willing to call this rally over. I wouldn't be willing to call a top on this rally until Bitcoin actually closes, and this is a key point, until Bitcoin actually closes a weekly dodo below the top 1,200 band, which is currently coming in around 8,500, and then has anything resembling continuation taking out the low side of that wick. If and when that does happen, I'm willing to call a top on this rally. For now, still, you go with the trend until it tells you otherwise. And again, does that mean that you're going to get the actual top to the dollar? Probably not. I mean, definitely not. Just like I didn't get the low to the dollar. I was buying in right over here, just like the high. I'll probably be selling, probably just a little bit off the high as well. Tentatively speaking, I do still think that our targets somewhere right around 94 to 9,600 are likely. These measure moves are still very much valid. They're still very much apparent. Again, as long as we hold that 8,400-ish level, they are valid, so to speak, and they are pointing, again, towards 94 to 9,600-ish area. So tentatively speaking, I would be looking for some counter trend pressure around that area. But a lot of people are looking at this to begin with, so it's no secret that a lot of people are looking around the mid 9,000s, maybe even 10,000 for the slightly more bullish. And what typically happens when everyone's looking at the same thing? Well, you either get front ran or you get overshot, so all of the heroes get liquidated, right? Anyways, actually, I just noticed on the 4-hour 1,200 bands, we are tightening up very, 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 very tight once again, and that typically does lead to some price action. So let's actually go to a 2 hour. Yeah, 2 hours damn tight. It's like a nice little sausage in there, and of which I'm really fucking hungry right now. So overall, I would say that this does want to move sooner rather than later. I'd say within the next day and a half, I'd be looking for a breakout or a breakdown to, by the same token, but I would be leaning to the upside here. Still bullish, pretty much on all time frames. Going over here to the 2-day dildo time frame, we did have a little bit of continuation of the downside after this doji dildo, but being bought up like this is strong and powerful. And looking at the volume right over here, it looks fine to me. Not only that, but we got the golden cross. The last time that we got the golden cross on the 2-day dildo time frame was all the way over here in 2015 at about 350, leading up Bitcoin for the next 3 years. So again, a longer term time frame perspective saying, hey, years down the road, it's looking fine. Also looking at the white 200 simple, you do see, when Bitcoin broke it in 2014, bad. When it regained it in 2015, good. And same thing over here. When it broke it over here, bad. When it regained it over here, well, good. And we can do the same thing for the 3-day as well. 3-day is one tick away from confirming a golden cross. The green and the purple is what I'm looking at right over here, and that will get another tick later tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern time. I wowould imagine that as long as Bitcoin does not dump below 6,000, that is pretty much guaranteed, as close to guaranteed as you can get, with getting a golden cross on this time frame. And again, the last time that we actually even got this cross was way over here in 2015, and again, just leading up to another 3-year rally. And we got death crossed over here, and now we're about to get golden cross. Golden cross once again. Not only that, but we do see 3-day Stokes hanging up in the more critical zone for a very long time. You get these during very strong trends. It does suggest that it's not the time to be super aggressive with looking for long positions, but trends still likely to continue as these have just had a fresh cross the upside. More importantly to me, I really want to keep my eyes on the 3-day jewel, which I think I strongly believe that Bitcoin will have a very, 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 very nasty retracement to the tune of 30 to 40%, somewhere in there. if and when Bitcoin gets this light blue oscillator into the more critical zone here around these red dotted lines, which is around an 88 to 90-ish read. That has been the trend in the past, where when it gets in these regions, extremely nasty nosedives. Even in the context of an overall uptrend, I mean, you have this guy right over here, about 40% down. You got this guy right over here, another 35% down. You got this guy right over here, another 33% down. You got this guy right over here, another 35% down. You get the idea. And I would be looking for a retracement to the tune of that if and when we do see this light blue get into this region over here. That's when I start to look for that signal to actually be verified and for us to, well, play out some pretty nasty downside. But for the time being, that would actually imply that Bitcoin has some more upside to go. Looking at the 3-day historical volatility percentile as well, we do see that it is, it is kind of primed in a way. It is kind of primed right now. So do we have enough enough fuel for another blow off? Yeah, actually yes. So again, there you go. I know it sounds crazy, but hey, the trend is your friend until the end of the trend. I know I always repeat that, but it's so fucking important. And even more important than that, the worst thing that you can do is be rational in an irrational market. So you've seen the same thing for the last. You've seen both sides probably, especially if you've been tuning into this content for the last year or so, where all of the perma bulls, they were calling bottoms, each and every $100 down, basically ever since like September, October, November, and they've just been wrecked all the way through. Bitcoin dropping 50% after that, and now the perma bears are calling tops every $100 up since like 4,000. Well, I can understand being bearish around this area right over here, 100%. But as soon as Bitcoin broke out of 4,000, that's why I've been holding on to this position for a long time, 39.30. So this has been about 4 months now, 5 months. One of my longer positions, I'd say, which typically I kind of avoid doing, but when you get one of those, I don't really see any reason to close it as long as we're, as long as we're above like 5,500. This thing is bullish. Now, of course, there's, you want to take profits and all that kind of stuff. Don't get me wrong, but as far as a long-term, long position, pretty happy with that one. And of course, this 5150 as well. So yes, I am a little bit exposed to the upside once again, and we do see 12-hour, just kind of basing off the red 10 simple. 12-hour Stokes technically are down right now, but they are weak. I don't really consider that a strong signal either which way. What I am a little bit concerned with is a 12-hour Joule. This one did technically fire off a sell signal yesterday, but I don't trust it here. The reason why I don't trust it is because during the strong signals, I want to see the pink and the white either be flat or have a down slope. Instead, we see them both with up slopes. So usually those ones get blown through, and I think that's kind of what we're seeing right now. I mean, to be fair, we did have, off that signal, we had about a 4% move to the downside. I mean, on those signals, you expect more than a 4% move, to be fair. But, I suppose you could say that it did have some play. But I'd say more importantly, if you do have access to the Joule, I don't consider those ones good signals. I consider them good when it's either flat for the pink and for the pink and the yellow, or down, and then you get the light blue getting rejected off those. Those are like the actual perfect where I'm happy to put on all kinds of risk. For right now, not so much. In fact, just looking at the price action, still constructive. And here's the thing: we need to go look at the top shitcoins because they are the ones leading the market right now. Mr. Buteral has taken the reins, and he is looking damn good, making new highs in the early morning hours. And it does look to me like 12 hours looking fine. Looking at the daily, fine. Daily has confirmed the yellow 21 exponential moving average above the blue 3.7. So slowly but surely, all these moving averages are migrating above. We're going to see the 89 cross the 200 relatively soon as well, and looking fine to me. Looking at the daily RSI, constructive. It will be building up some divergence, but I do think that we see a move around $300 at the very least. Before that, I'd say my tentative targets for this one or areas of interest are $300 and $330 and $360 in order of obvious importance. You have to do one before the other. And in fact, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to delete this whole chart because we really don't need too much on it. In fact, if I was just to chart this out right now, I'd say you got one right there. I'd say you got a nice base right there. You got a nice base right there, and you got this target right here at 300, 330, and where's my 360 coming in from this low right over there? And it should be matching up with our volume profile as well, which, as you can see, nice and filled out within this region. So $300 to 330 will be a point of contention, I would imagine. But within this region, I would be looking for pullbacks and whatnot. But for now, looking powerful to me and looking like this one wants more. Lower time frames, all well and good. If I were to chart this out on a 4 hour, I would say that we had a nice ascending triangle right here. We can make a measure move on this baby, and I'm sure that is probably pointed up towards that 330ish target. If I had to guess, yeah, about 320 to 330ish area. So anywhere in that region, I would be looking for some counter trend pressure, as that's going to be a bought and algo target. So they, anywhere around there, I'd be looking to not be. Perhaps take some profits and all that good stuff. Again, non-exact thing, but overall, fine by my standards. Looking at the weekly just looks like continuation. Again, Mr. Buteau looks strong. And it looks like he wants to take the reins for the market for a little bit of time. Let's look at Mrs. Litecoin. How's she doing? Mrs. Litecoin, also an example of a stronger one as well. Let's go to the daily. Yeah, daily looks a lot more like Bitcoin. But again, a good reaction nonetheless. And I would say that if this one wants to move up again, I think my next target is maybe like 125. We kind of already hit, in a way, we kind of already hit it. We got up to 122 on GDAX. Doesn't need to get exactly there to the dollar, not necessarily, but I do think that we make another run towards 125 most likely. Again, overall bullish setup on this beautiful gal, and going down to lower time frames. Very constructive after breaking out of this 109ish region. Retested last night beautifully and wicked off, and looks to me like it wants to give another run to the upside. 4 hour Stokes having a fresh cross the upside looks fine. Again, 4 hour RSI just building. It looks constructive. Most things in this market look bullish to me. Let's go look at the other strong one, EOS. EOS actually taking the reins as well, consolidating right out of major resistance. Usually, the saying is that when you consolidate out of major resistance, typically that's a bullish thing. Just like when you consolidate out of major support, usually a bearish thing. Not always, but more often than not when we're talking about statistics. And this one, building up a nice case right now. I would imagine if we do break this 8.25 region, the next target's going to be right around about $9, a little bit above $9, like $9.10, something like that. Looking fine. Looking at the weekly, yeah, again, one of the stronger ones for sure, EOS. Regardless of your thoughts on it, just calling a chart looks fine. It looks damn good to me. And going back onto the lower time frames, we're basically just flagging out at a nice resistance. We can make a measure move on this as it is a flag, and let's just see what this would imply if this were to break out to the upside. And come on, baby, show me the charts. Actually, it'd imply significantly higher than that $9.20 target. It would imply about $10, a little bit above $10. So EOS looking fine here, man. Again, I don't know how aggressive I'd get with this one, as it is a little bit extended, to be fair. But hey, go with the strong until not. And this is what I mean by going with the strong. I mean, you're seeing a lot of alts just barely holding on to their lows. And we can actually, before we get into the alts, let's actually go look at traditional markets. So traditional markets, we did hit the 277.5 target. Oh my God, actually to the T, a little bit lower than that, about 276. 277 it looks like we got down to. So about 50 cents lower than that. I do think that it does attempt to bounce around this area. I don't think that there's going to be significantly more downside until we get a new monthly, which will be next week. But weekly supports have been tested, and I do think that we put in some time, probably at the very least going sideways and probably testing up around the 281.25-ish level. I am still bearish on traditional markets, more like medium term, but for now, lower time frames probably do want to bounce. Looking at the monthly's just a day away from closing a massive bearish engulfing dildo, which over time I'd be looking for a move down into the 269 to 265ish region. But for right now, probably does bounce off this area, and then we'll reassess when we get that new monthly. But lower time frames, yeah, I do think I'm trying to put in a base here and probably do bounce up to about 281.5ish area. Other than that, I do want to show this. I want to show the correlation coefficient with this as it is, as we are actually showing a negative correlation between traditional markets and Bitcoin. So in the purple indicator at the bottom, I'm looking at the price correlation between Bitcoin on Bitstamp and SPY on, well, SPY on BATS, it looks like, or SIBO. And we have extremely strong negative correlation on the daily. Now, if we were to extend this to a weekly, it is not. It's actually a positive correlation, but is coming down rather rapidly. Came down all the way from about a 6.5 read to now about almost half that. It looks like. I can't really tell exactly, about 4.6. Okay, maybe not half that, but close enough. My math's not so good. And on a monthly, we are actually negatively correlated as well. So just barely negatively correlated. To be fair, this is basically no correlation. I mean, we're neither positive nor negative, so it's really hard to make a read off that. But you do see that the dailies having lead on over into the weekly, and the weeklies having lead on over into the monthly, of course. And that would mean that if I do look for a little bit of a bounce here, that actually could imply some downside for Bitcoin. But overall, bearishness in SPY would be considered bullish for Bitcoin, and I would be a little bit more long-term. I wouldn't say long-term, but medium-term bearish on SPY, especially after this right here, which very obviously looks like distribution. You can see increasing volume on the downside as well, like as it just gets walked down very orderly. It's beautiful, man. It's fucking beautiful. So yeah, I did want to point that out. Let's take this guy off and go back on. I mean, what else do we want to look at here? Not too much else to look at. In fact, historical volatility percentile getting quite low, so we are setting up for a pretty aggressive move, I would say. But yeah. Anyways, going to check out, let's go check out the other top shitcoins now. We got Cardano over here. Again, you know, I don't want to say, you know, I called it, I knew it, what else do people say? Target hit, precise, precision. It's like, shut the fuck up. But hey, you know, this one very sloppy chart, but is putting in a low here, and I do believe that we're going to still see that move up to about 1,200 satoshis and probably higher over time. I think that a lot of alts are setting in lows. They look a lot of the time like this. It's fucking sloppy. It's fucking ugly. But that's just the way that some of these cryptos trade. So this would be an example of something a little bit on the weaker side, just because it hasn't really made a move in the same way that we've seen a lot of other ones make a move, like. I guess EOS is a good example, or Litecoin is a good example, which we'll maybe go to a little bit later. Yeah, I would still kind of stick with, you know, longer term, a target of around 1,250, maybe 1,300 satoshis, and I do think that this one is pretty much putting in a low here, and that's going to be confirmed if we do move above 1,150, which is kind of my next short-term target on this guy. GBDC, forgot to cover this one. Actually, continuation bullish. Looks good to me. Looks pretty damn good. BNB, again, to me, BNB and Bitcoin were moving together. While BNB does look bullish here, I don't see it leading right now. I see that it wants to trade back up to its prior high of about $35, as we said yesterday. I'd still be sticking with that. Again, taking its time, but overall, very similar to Bitcoin. Just a little bit of a trading range. Support right here at about 32.5. Resistance right here at about 35.25. A break above 35.25, and I'm looking for a move to about $38. Overall, again, certainly one of the stronger ones in the market. In fact, perhaps the strongest one in the market over the past 4 or 5 months. But right now, I do think that there's a few other ones that are looking a little bit stronger, as this one's, you know, it's still looking good, and I still do think some continuation, but you know, it's kind of it's done a lot already. It's done a lot. Zcash, what's Zcash doing? Again, you know, putting in lows in this area. This was a buy, as we spoke about last week, around this $68 region, and continuation now hitting our first target right around 89.25, and I do think that it does make a run towards this next target, actually a little bit higher than where I currently have it, somewhere right around like 105, 106. Seems quite likely. Looking at it daily, again, you know, a beautiful test off the purple 200 exponential. Exactly what we said yesterday, that it was likely to continue off this area, and that's. I'd still be sticking with that. Again, it takes its time, but it does happen. Bcash breaking out as well. I do like what I see here. Bcash probably looking for a move towards, at the very least $500. I still do have that measure move coming in right around there, but over time higher towards about 555 and well, almost 600 actually. Looking at the weekly looks good. Resistance is right overhead. That's where the $500 target's coming from. But I'd still be comfortable with it. And looking at the daily, even a little bit higher towards 550 looks quite likely in the relatively near future. Tron Cash, again, consolidation above a resistance. We've been bullish on this one for a while. Still be bullish on it. Still think that it probably moves up towards the 3.9 cent region, 4 cent region. Looks fine. Looks fine to me. Again, I mean, pretty much everything in this market moves together. So when I'm bullish on one, I'm bullish on pretty much everything else. Neocash, what's Neocash doing? Yeah, looking like he wants to move as well. I'd still be sticking with this 15 and a quarter to 15 and a half cent target, and probably higher over time towards maybe like 17 bucks. EOS, again, I think we already looked at this one, but strong. Right at resistance. I do think that you probably see this resistance break sooner rather than later. We do have a bullish cross on these moving averages here, and I'd say next target tentatively is 9 and a quarter. Technically, we do have a measure move a little bit higher towards $10, but I feel like that's kind of pushing things a little bit, but hey, fair enough, man. It is there. It is apparent. Looking at Mr. Ripple's nipples, very strong move. I do think I'd still stick with my target of about 52 cents region on the weekly, and in overtime probably higher than that. Looking good. Having an exponential moving average golden cross confirmed with yesterday night's close, and now we're looking like we want to take out the prior high of about 48 cents, and I'd say that that's going to lead on to continuation towards that 52 cent region rather quickly. And more importantly, an exponential moving average cross is significantly more important than a simple moving average cross in my experience, and this one has both confirmed actually. Looking at the Bitcoin pairing, I still would stick with my target of 5,500 satoshis in the in the short-term future, and longer term probably somewhere right around 61. Monero Cash, looking strong as well, and another example of a stronger one. I do think that it makes another run towards its $100 level, but realistically, longer term, my target would be like 115. I do think that this one has some good things going on here. Looking at these Toshi pairing, I'm curious what this one looks like. Yeah, again, a sloppier one, certainly a sloppier one. Kind of like Cardano, but probably put in a low. It just seems to me that a lot of these things want to put in lows like this. It's ugly as fuck, but it works. Stellar, I'll still be sticking with my 15 and a half. What was it, like 15 and a quarter, 15 and a half cent target. We got up to 14 and a half cent last night. I think this one continues. Daily looks fine. Yeah, 15 and a quarter. I'd stick with that, and probably higher over time, to be fair, towards longer term 19 and a half cent target. This is a bottoming formation here, kind of in a similar way that Krown did it as well. So both nice versus Satoshi's. Again, very, very ugly way that it's doing it, but probably does work its way back up to 1950 and then 2200 Satoshis over time. So yeah, I think that pretty much covers everything that I wanted to speak on. Let's maybe go back to Bitcoin for a second. Is there anything else that I left out? Maybe go back down to lower time frame, see how these guys are filling out. Again, just taking its time, and I really want to go back and explain that when we're looking at these lower time frames, a lot of the time I just do it for for demonstration analysis purposes. Yes, good trades can be made off them, absolutely, but I can't stress this enough. Pay attention to the higher time frames. You'll notice that a lot of the time my video titles have absolutely nothing to do with what I'm thinking on price action. They're just there for YouTube clickbait bullshit, and I do apologize about that. It is a little bit embarrassing, but it is YouTube at the same point in time. It is kind of fun as well. It's like you put up an extremely bearish title. It's like downside targets, and then you talk about Bitcoin being bullish, and vice versa during the bear market. It just gets more views and all that kind of stuff. I do apologize about it if it does set in the wrong precedent, but I think that it's more important with the content rather than the face value, right? Anyways, with that said, I'd actually be even bullish on the lower time frames here too. Looks to me like it wants to take another leg up and find some comfort around the 88 to 88.50-ish level. I kind of consider that we already basically hit it again. So even yesterday when we spoke about likely to come back down to 85.50 and then bounce off there to 8800, well, yeah, it takes its time, and I know a lot of people like to look at the lower time frames, but you can get lost in these ones. And realistically, I mean, if I just show you this chart right here, you're gonna immediately say Krown. That's we have continuation. And actually, let's talk about the monthly for a second too, as we only have one more day in this month, and we are one day away from confirming our first higher high. With the dildo body close, we've already confirmed it with a wick, and I would say that's probably good enough for me. More importantly, we do see monthly Stokes pointing back up and erect. We do see monthly RSI pointing back up and taking out the exponential. The next time that we actually see this guy come back down and test the exponential, I probably would be a buyer for a little bit more of a long-term position, and that would imply that we do come down at some point, and I think that's probably going to be confluent with the 3-day jewel. So yeah, as far as that goes, I think that's pretty much everything that I wanted to say. If I wanted to synthesize my thoughts back up, I'd say higher time frames still consolidation / bullish. Lower time frames actually switching around to an upwards posturing as well. I'd be running with this assumption as long as we maintain 2-hour dildo closes above about 86.25 right over here. If if 86.25 does get taken out to the downside, which I'm not really leaning towards, then I would say at the very least another test of 8,400. But personally speaking, I would be looking a little bit lower than that to fill the gap at around 8,200 on CMEs. However, for now, top of the range still 88.50 a share. If we can get a 2-hour delta close above there, I'd feel pretty confident in saying that we will see 9,000 plus, like 9,200 would be a more immediate target, and then over time, probably does make its way towards that 94, 9,600 region, and then I'll be looking for, perhaps some counter trend pressure. Anyways, that's going to do it for right now. I'll be back on later with some more live stream action, some more live stream analysis. Look forward to seeing you there. If not, well, I do want to wish you well on this beautiful Thursday, and take care.